when you see a lifespan of 15 years, 10 years, and 5 years, the Mexican government bonds have overperformed the dollar and the T-bill. The thing that has surprised you the most about the last advancements this year in AI?
So I'm right now just thinking a lot about one, what is this intersection of AI and crypto, and two, how does this change a lot of development economics in emerging markets?
These tools are definitely increasing productivity, but I did wanted to mention that like most of the things that I see on Twitter, the output is quite and the reality is that you need expertise.
AI is going to accelerate everything. Bad founders are going to be worse and good founders are going to be better. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze frontier technologies in frontier markets. I'm Ab, co-founder and CEO of Bando, and with my great friend Kush, founder of Odisea, and Simon, head of growth at Alliance. And today we are going to discuss two really interesting topics. The first one is our last Frontera essay, where we analyze how Mexican government bonds have overperformed the US dollar and the T-bill and why this has happened. It seems like the whole market and the world is sleeping or slept on this trade for the last 15 years. So we're going to analyze that. And also we're going to have a little section about AI and how we're really using it. Kush is addicted to OpenClaw. Simon is automating a bunch of stuff using different tools. So those are the main topics for today. And guys, how's everything? Kush, tell me more about where you are, what has happened in the last weeks for you.
I'm now back home, and yeah, not much. It's always nice to be home and back in your rhythms and not, I think for those of us that travel, I think we all very intentionally are like choosing not to travel a lot this year. None of us are in Denver. I think it's like, okay, I'm just going to go to, I have a couple of conferences planned, but really it's just like minimizing it. So yeah, happy to be back and in my rhythms with my motorcycle. So life is good. Can't complain.
You do a lot of motorcycle stuff?
Yes, that's my primary mode of transport.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
You guys ride bikes? Are you bike aficionados or?
Not really.
I used to. I do. I love them, and I had a cafe racer for some time, but after getting too comfortable with the bike, I decided to stop. I sold it and decided to like not get into that hobby because I know how dangerous it is. But I do like the idea of like going somewhere like with nature and then like renting a 1,000 like cc bike and just like doing some sort of tourism like that, which it's possible because I know how to ride bikes, but I am not like an expert on mechanics, nothing like that. And I just wanted to like ensure that I don't kill myself because even with a 200cc engine, like I was like getting too comfortable with it. Yeah.
And how about you, Simon? You're still in New York or you're back home?
I'm in Portugal. I'm here in Portugal, and well, I applied to the O1 visa last week, and I should know by end of February, early March, if they approve me or not. So yeah, this year, maybe first half of the year, I'll be living in New York. Yeah.
Well, amazing. Let us know how that goes. And guys, let's jump right into the Frontera essay that we published. And I'm here showing in the screen the essay that we published. Go to frontera.bhive.com. We're gonna put the link in the show notes because I think this is one of the best essays we've published, and we published some banger pieces. And let me tell you a little bit about why we published this. So Cetes are Mexican government bonds. And in Bando, we're deploying a product that is enabling tokenized Cetes for the whole Mexican market. Getting a Cete today is extremely complicated. If you're a retail person, you need to get it through a government app that you can imagine how shitty it is. It's absolute crap. And if you are an institution, you can get it through a bank that has liquidity just from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you want to liquidate something after 2 p.m., impossible. Also, you gotta juggle the maturation dates of the bonds. If you buy a set of 28 days or 60 days, obviously, if you sell it before, they penalize you with some withdrawal fees. Also, it's crazy that in order to liquidate this type of assets, people still need to talk with a banker and literally in the phone. So it's a really complex thing. And also, it's the most demanded feature in the market. I know that 32% of fintech users are already holding Cetes outside of fintech wallets. And eh, you know that government bonds are this thing that every person in the country understand that brand. If you think of assets as brands, in crypto, for example, Bitcoin has the best brand ever. Maybe afterwards, Solana, Ethereum. It happens the same with stocks. Amazon has a great brand in stocks. Nvidia has a great brand, and in bonds it happens the same. If you go to Mexico and you talk about T-bills to a regular person, they really don't know what it is. They don't care about it. So we started analyzing how relevant have this asset of Cetes, how good has been their performance in the last years. And the key message is that when you see a lifespan of 10 years, well, 15 years, 10 years, and 5 years, the Mexican government bonds have overperformed the dollar and the T-bill. So we created this chart that basically the blue line is T-bills and the gray line is USD. The bando color line are Cetes. And here, what you can see is that sometimes it goes up, sometimes in a specific period between 2015 and 2021, there was a tight competition between Cetes and USD and T-bills. But afterwards and before that, basically this currency and this asset has overperformed the dollar. And there are three main parts of this chart. Post-financial crisis, so basically 0% interest rate for the T-bill. And here, as Mexico has a higher risk as a country, we need to have higher yields to attract capital. So that's why slowly but steadily the Cetes were overperforming the dollar. And then something really interesting happened. That is the Trump trade. Basically, the prices of oil went way basically dumped. You remember when a price of barrel of oil was near, well, negative numbers. So a lot of the revenue from Mexico comes from oil. So basically, that debilitated the currency. And also, when Trump entered, everyone was afraid that this guy was gonna like wreck the markets and destroy the economies of other countries. So that's why the US dollar went really high up. And what happened? What happened afterwards was fascinating. It's the COVID era. And what happened during COVID? So basically, the Americans, the US, needed to increase the rates in order to reduce inflation. But at the same time, they debased their currency. So when you have this combination, when they increased rates, Mexico needed to increase rates even higher to compete at a macro level. And when they debased their currency, basically they started losing value versus other currencies. And Mexico specifically is in a really interesting position geographically because Chinese industry is deploying capital in Mexico. BYD, it's the rumor says that they are buying the manufacturing plant from Nissan. So basically, Chinese capital is entering Mexico. And as the US want to detach themselves from China, we have this event of nearshoring, which is also giving a lot of strength to Mexican currency. So basically, we're in this position where Mexico seems to be like an amazing place to deploy capital. And during the past 15 years, this asset, Cetes, have overperformed the US dollar. And we analyze a lot in this essay. So, Kush, I would like to start with you, just your general takes about this analysis. Do you have any questions? Obviously, I'm Mexican. I wrote part of this essay, so I'm really knowledgeable about this specific topic. Give me your takes.
I think there's a lot to say here. But honestly, it's crazy to me that Cetes have returned over 2x compared to T-bills basically over the course of the last 15 years. But interestingly, the foreign holdings have actually declined, right? So they've gone from 112 billion to 92 billion roughly, right? So sort of 86% of what that original demand was. I think this is just like emerging market debt effectively being quite underpriced to some extent, right? I think that for me, what would ultimately drive this, is, as you talk about, obviously like nearshoring is a really critical driver here. And then you mentioned China too, right? I think it'll be interesting to see how much the US tries to in-house as much production as possible and then allow China to come in. For almost all of Latin America, China is a bigger trading partner than the US these days. So, and Mexico is actually one of the really big exceptions here, right? Does China actually end up being able to overtake the US in that trading relationship will be interesting. So I think that that's another like component to really monitor is as China has a stronger foothold in the Americas, how does the interest rate for these government bonds actually shift? You might say that they might weaken, especially if, depends on how the Chinese are thinking about positioning the yen and as whether or not they want the sort of global reserve currency status or not. I think that's yet to be seen. I wouldn't be surprised if that's ultimately the goal, but TBD. But I do think that like one of the important drivers here, and one of the sort of really core conversations right now in the US, and it's sort of largely what got Trump elected in office as well, is the spiraling debt that the US currently finds itself in. Interestingly, Mexico's debt is 50% debt to GDP ratio, right? So again, about, the US is over 120. So, it's no surprise here that I think all of these macroeconomic factors are ultimately the reason why the Cetes have performed so well. But I think it's like the investor appetite. Like I'm not personally like rushing to put any money into Cetes, but I did see this project on Solana recently, Mega ETH that launched. It's called BRIX, BRIX. And they're looking at this sort of emerging market bond thesis. We worked very closely with the Bondi team. We invested in the Bondi team as well. They're doing a lot of emerging market bonds, and those guys are freaking. In fact, it'd be really interesting to have them on as guests, because they're like Ali and Alexo are some of the most, and Akin are some of the most knowledgeable folks on emerging market debt. But yeah, I mean, I think those are a few of the wider issues that I see. Venezuela, I think at one point when we talked about Venezuela, had a really, like Venezuelan debt did like a, 50% rise over the course of 48 hours too, right? So I think there's a lot of like mispriced opportunities here that we'll probably see come online. And I think the question is like, where does crypto come into this? It sort of feels like crypto's gone out of fashion to some extent for a lot of folks, right? And I think it's like, well, global access basically to these opportunities is what's interesting here.
Yeah, something relevant that I see is that at Bando, I generally say use cases over bull cases. And what I mean is that this infrastructure that we're building, it's not just crypto for crypto's sake, but it's the best way to get Cetes. I mean, obviously rate is a little bit lower, but it's instant liquidity. And there's no other way to enable this in a simple way. So this is, for me, specifically for Cetes, is like the stablecoin moment, in the sense that maybe not in the US, not a lot of people understood why it was so relevant, but everywhere around the world we understood the power of making money move like with infinite liquidity, almost infinite liquidity. So I think that the market is not still understanding this specific element. What you just said, like what you just said before, that the amount of foreign debt Mexico is held is going down. That's an analysis that I did. It was also surprising because, I mean, this asset is overperforming. I want to run this analysis versus all bonds in the world. And I think that Cetes could be the best performing bond in the last 15 years. The problem is that frontier markets have frontier problems, right? So in the essay, the final thing that we say is, so what's happening? Well, who the fuck knows? Because with this, like, we could get political instability. There could happen something weird in the market that turns it down. But right now, I think that this specific market is in a great position, and it's one of the most untapped markets for crypto. So, Simon, I would love to hear your take on how do you see, was this surprising to you? It was super surprising to me. I needed to run the numbers like 4 times just to make sure that I was not doing something stupid. And how do you see this opportunity for tokenized assets, and any general take that you want to give about Cetes, T-bills, tokenized bonds?
Yeah, I think first of all, I have to start by saying that I'm not a kind of a macroeconomic or a T-bill trader. I'm not an expert in macro, or I don't trade T-bills at all, to be honest. I just read about it, and my general thoughts around this is it's not that I'm impressed by the fact that the T-bills are returning more. In reality, I don't know why it is, but I could assume that it is because of the fact that it's easier to go from 1 to 2 than it is to go from 1,000 to 2,000, right? So I guess there's easier arbitrage in smaller markets, in nascent markets, in less mature markets. And if I had to be if I had to take a guess, for me, at the end of the day, T-bills are just debt on shitcoins, ultimately. All fiat money is shitcoins. And so looking at it from that perspective, and it's also these rates are defined by central institutions, and they're very shady in how they work. So it's interesting, but to me, it's also the returns are based on what? On dollar terms, on compared to the local fiat terms in the case of Mexico. Are we comparing those returns to gold or other stronger assets? And so for me, it's when I see these things, or when I think about T-bills, it's an interesting discussion and an interesting food for thought. And I can sit down and listen to experts talking about macro for hours, but if I had to really break it down to its basics, I just have to go back to what I believe, which is that all these is systems are built on top of a deck of cards, right? And it's completely arbitrary and centralized, and it's all a bunch of shit coins that are backed by nothing but the word and the trust of people. And so, yeah, it's more like a game, I would say. Clearly, a bunch of crypto projects are going to try to tokenize emerging market debt and just make money out of it. That's fine. And just like that, just like treasuries, there's a bunch of other arbitrage opportunities and places where people can make quick money. It's ultimately if that's the kind of discussion.
How I see it is, there are two ways of analyzing this type of situations. The first one, when you think of first principles, as you said, first principles work amazingly to understand reality and to map out a long-term future, right? So based out of that, you can foresee and hypothesize how the global economic system is going to unfold. But that, in my opinion, that will take several years. So you can see it as a finished building, or as a process of getting step by step to a specific point. And what I see here is that combination of, we are crypto natives, we understand that Bitcoin is the best asset to hold your wealth. But then again, when you talk with the millions of people millions of users, specifically in Mexico, you cannot deny that Cetes have a better brand than Bitcoin for them. And when I see that, talking to users, it's a lot easier to get them through the process of getting to Bitcoin, understanding how shitty the system is, instead of trying to like tear down all their knowledge about Cetes and all of this shit and get them right into Bitcoin, because that's not a clear position. So it also reminds me a lot of The Big Short. You remember this part when they get to place their trade and the two young guys are like dancing and saying like, "Yeah, we're gonna make a shit ton of money." And I think that is Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt's character tells them like, "Stop dancing. You know that if we're right, like millions of people are gonna die. Your mother's gonna lose their home. Your friends are gonna be poor." And they're like, "Oh fuck, I need to call my mother," right? So having this, sometimes I feel like that with being such a strong Bitcoin believer. So the opportunity that I see is that in order to evolve the whole economic system to the first principles that we see, based on the first principles that we see and the inevitable future, there's a big opportunity to build something that accelerates that future, right? And I think that's something I would love to hear your take on that specific thing of how you think about that in Alliance, because at the end, it's about building companies, creating wealth, creating impact, and at the end, if we were only building like the end state future, we would be building like DeFi in Bitcoin only, or I don't know, other type of products. So based on these opportunities and these like time lapses of 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, how do you see this evolution of, it's obvious that the US is getting weaker every day, and this SA is just looking at data and analyzing that. How do you see these opportunities on when you analyze new startups in Alliance, and also the performance of your current portfolio?
Well, I guess that like you're right. Ultimately, like at Alliance and any fund, our objective is to we have a fiduciary duty to make money for our LPs, and ultimately what we want to do is make money ourselves. And we're capitalists at the end of the day. I believe firmly that like money talks, and that the flow of money goes to places where it needs to go. Like if in a fully free capitalist world, there needs to be less human intervention, and people with the right tools and the right regulations can solve the problems in the best way possible as soon as they arise, right? So whenever the fires happened in California recently, instead of the government coming in and trying to create all this red tape, all the companies for insurance can come and they can fight for prices, and there's going to be a change in price, but then it's going to come back to normal. And capitalism usually solves itself out, and that's how I've seen it play, like in I think 100% of the cases that I've analyzed. So from our perspective, when we're investing in startups, it's the same, right? Startups need to find product market fit, which means that they actually build something that people want, and which means that they're solving a problem or a need or a want. And to that end, I am less. I would say I am less into the specifics. Of course, as long as there's nothing unethical, I'm less caring about the specifics of what companies are doing. I'm more focused on getting them to product market fit, getting them to build companies that work, getting them to focus on the right things, and just really understanding how to do customer research, how to build product faster, how to have a quick development process, iteration process, experimentation, how to have good judgment, and all those things. And so, yeah, to that end, basically, if companies are building on DeFi, and that's something that has a market for it, we're gonna back them. We're gonna back the founders. We're gonna back founders who are great, who have a great background, who have the right skills to build unicorn companies and decacorn companies. And sometimes we'll find a market that hasn't been, let's say, walked before, and that has such a strong pull that it doesn't matter if the founder is good or bad. The founder is building in, like, I was lucky to find this market, and then they can make all the mistakes in the world and they will still be successful, right? So from that perspective, I'm more I care more about like ethics and vision and morals and all these things related to my own personal investments, related to my own personal decisions. But towards the companies that we invest, I'm more thinking about like how do they build something that people want, and I don't dictate what people want.
Yeah, that's a classical essay from Mark Andreessen on what's more important at a startup: the market, the product, or the team. And Mark Andreessen always says the market. If you have great founders, great teams in a terrible market, they're not going to do anything. You can have a shitty team and a shitty product in a market that pulls out the product out of them, and they're going to be successful. So sometimes it's hard to hear those types of things as a founder, because you say, no, like, I know that I can make this work, but my priority, number one as a founder, is finding the right market, right? So go there, read. Also, I think that at Frontera we're having the best titles for our essays. This one is just incredible. A global bond fable, the torta, Cetes, and the hair tibial. So go read it. And now I want to chat about AI. I feel that Kush is like my AI friend, using obsessed with OpenClaw, Claude, and Mill, and 1,000 other things. So Kush, please walk us through what you're doing. I want to tell you what we're doing at Espacio Crypto. Some tools that Lalo have built that are really amazing. But tell us, I want to hear from the source, the thing that has surprised you the most about the last advancements this year in AI with OpenClaw, Sonnet 4.2, I think. And what are you using specifically these tools for?
I basically gave the entire Olisa team the budget to buy any like max subscription of AI, because I think it's the highest leverage tool right now that exists out there for anything that you do, whether it's engineering, sales, operations, finance, anything. I think the two like generally standout winners are Opus as a really great coding model. I think Gemini 3 also has like great reasoning. Codex also great for coding, but much drier. So if there's any like more verbose sort of expectations that you have on your coding model, I wouldn't go for Codex. It's pretty freaking dry. But yeah, I mean that's effectively like my thought right now. I think the intersection. I mean, Tomas, the co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation, just stepped down because he wants to focus on this intersection of AI and crypto. So I think that AI is certainly the sort of fastest horse right now in between sort of AI and crypto. I think that we will see a massive acceleration of AI, this very offensive technology. And we've talked about this in the past before. Crypto will sort of arise as the defensive kind of component here too. We're doing a lot of research internally on this intersection of AI risk and crypto in Latin America as well. I think I think that we're heading for, and we already saw this like massive SaaS drawdown where we saw billions being wiped off of the entire market. And I think we'll probably end up seeing like further drawdowns as we start seeing basically the cost of a lot of engineering nearly go to zero. And as a consequence, I think that we are going to see I just think that like economics as a whole, specifically in emerging markets, will be massively transformed. I know for a lot of like leading AI founders of these sort of both mega scalers, but also folks who are developing a lot of models from these larger companies, this massive gap that we're creating between emerging markets and what's happening in Silicon Valley and New York and Shenzhen. It's actually really concerning. So I'm right now just thinking a lot about, one, what is this intersection of AI and crypto, and two, how does this change a lot of development economics in emerging markets? So yeah, how I've been using it, I basically, again, aside from like getting the whole team, I basically built like the entire company in Claude, and then gave everybody their individualized like folders and sort of agents and skills that they could just run off and do their work basically 10 to 50 times faster. We are playing a lot with OpenClaw. We have some things that we're going to be releasing quite soon that are very fun. So that's it. But I've been hearing a lot of discourse from the venture landscape, Simon, and I was curious to see how you guys at Alliance are internalizing this, or just generally your thesis, right? Because it's like, I think that nobody is really looking to back early stage software founders as much as they might be willing to. Thrive, I think, just raised $10 billion. And if I'm not mistaken, 90% of that is going down to double down on their previous bets, right? So Anthropic just raised 30 bill. And then I'm hearing for a lot of early stage founders, it's really hard to go out and raise because it's like, hey, I don't know if like what you're building is really going to be defensible anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's so much to unpack. Like the first thing that is really interesting is that we believe that founder is the future job. That's it. Like nothing is for granted, but one thing that is potentially going to be still existing is like being a founder, being able to create things. I think that more and more we're going to have robotics in medicine. We're going to have we're going to not need accountants. We're going to not need lawyers. And so in the future, like, if one thing is for sure, that it's, people can still use these tools to build things. Well, found like it's an exciting time that it's going to push people to just try to become creators. And it's cool because the reality is that being creative and having good problem solving skills and it's something that a lot of people have, right? And maybe they never honed that skill, and maybe their parents pushed them towards certain careers, or the world just told them that they needed to be someone who was probably different towards their real curiosity. So I think now we're going to be able to see a lot more people from a lot more different backgrounds building companies and applying different sort of like problem solving and creative thinking to things. So that's one thing. And actually, now being highly technical is less important for selecting high teams. Essentially, there used to be a time where like you needed to have a really high technical team. I feel like more and more, as days pass, months pass, we're not gonna necessarily take into account technical proficiency as much as before. Before it was like 80% of the decision, right? Like if you're really highly technical, you can probably do most things. Otherwise, you're not even considered. So it's kind of like flipping the script. So that's one thing. That's just general thoughts about like AI and in terms of like accelerators and investment and like founders. Also, another thing, obviously, we're obviously including AI at Alliance and automating as much as we can. And in the future, I think not only Alliance, but any single company has to be fully AI enabled as much as possible. And we are obviously doing that. And how that looks for a VC, I think you can imagine, just quicker decisions, quicker invest money from the moment somebody has a meeting to the moment that they get the money in the bank. Just improvement of processes, like faster processes and like super clean processes, so that the entire experience of fundraising becomes seamless. And to be honest, until I was working at Alliance, I didn't know how complicated it is to have a venture capital firm. It's basically a full-on organization to invest, manage investments, manage a bunch of paperwork, a bunch of legal, a bunch of stuff that like it requires a huge. It used to require a lot of teams. And now less. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be easier to become an investor. Actually, the contrary. Like where what's seeing is like more and more the capital from LPs is flowing to a few VCs that can show returns. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that on like what's happening for us at Alliance in terms of AI, and in terms of me, basically I'm using Claude. I'm using all the tools just to test them, but the ones that I'm using for work mostly are Claude and N8N. And one thing I do want to mention is because I think everybody is like, there's a lot of hype on OpenClaw. There's a lot of hype with everything at the moment, and that's fine. It's obviously these tools are definitely increasing productivity and just making everything easier. But I did wanted to mention that like most of the things that I see on Twitter and most of the things that I see people do in general, the output is quite shit. And there can be an increased, like a sense of productivity where like, everybody's using these tools and everybody thinks that, oh, I automated my entire go-to-market. And you see the thing and it's like, it's a shit automation, right? And the reality is that you need expertise. You still need expertise to create good automations. And if you just tell an agent, do this, it's going to make a shit job. It's going to make a 80% good job. But the rest 20%, it's what separates, great from whatever, honestly. And I wouldn't be surprised in the future, people are going to be able to prompt it and it's going to create a much better job. But we're still a little bit far away from that. And I think it might create a lot of stress in people seeing everything that's happening, everybody trying to automate all these things. And the reality is that, at least from now, from my own experience, just to build any sort of automation, even as a small part, like a third part of the outreach process for sales, for example, for a complicated sales, it takes me 2 weeks to build, and it's an any-day workflow that has 25 different nodes of code and agents doing specific things that need to be tested and need to have error handling and need to have modularity and flexibility that I can actually play with it. It's not as simple as just go do your thing, whatever. AI does help, but again, I just wanted to share that, like good work still requires expertise and time. And but yeah, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's cool to see OpenClaw and like connected to WhatsApp and to Telegram and like do all these things.
I read some time ago one of the best takes. I think that one of my favorite takes of 2025 was this essay where the author said AI is going to accelerate everything. Like bad founders are going to be worst and good founders are going to be better. So basically what you just said, like a bad founder with no go-to-market experience, I don't know, we'll put a couple of agents and say, okay, perfect, that's my go-to-market. Let's move on to product. And then let's move on to whatever. And they're going to build like if you have a shitty army, you're going to be a shitty product, a shitty team. And the other thing that on that you were talking, Simon, just to finish, I would place a bet today that this trend of AI will only accelerate the need for more in real life connection. Because in Alliance, I would assume you receive a bunch of applications and obviously you interview the best teams and all of that. But I have the hypothesis that if you don't have like an in real life interview process, eventually there's going to be a discrepancy between the expectations and the level of the founder when they are performing at the office. And you see like, wow, this guy seems so genius and he's like a dumbass guy. So
yeah,
this is like the inversion of that, where you accelerate the output, you also need to accelerate the sensibility of understanding how relevant or how bright someone is. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, two things is that related to the first point. I think one way to think about this is that a good way to think about it is like the number of tokens used or consumed in relation to the output generated. And that's going to be an interesting kind of ratio to look at, I think, internally. At least it's something that I'm keeping kind of like myself in check. But still, like, I have to be honest, like, even my colleague Roberto always tells me, like, hey, you gotta like sometimes use your own judgment as well, because you're using AI too much for some things that you don't need it. You could just like, but I'm focusing on something, and then I just tell this other thing like, hey, do this, and then I just send it out, right? So I'm even falling into this trap, but I'm keeping it as I'm more present in, because I think that's a good way to think about it. It's like, how much tokens am I using, and like, what is the output, and where are the things that are actually moving the needle for me. And I think just wanted to mention that. In terms of in real life, I agree. More and more founders are asking us to have a full, the cohorts to be full in real life, which at Alliance is only the first 2 weeks and the last week. And they wanted to be fully in New York. And I think it's a trend of like founders, people just want to spend more time with like-minded people. There used to be a time, when COVID happened, where like everybody just wanted to be fully remote, and that's logical. But I think people already kind of learned that there needs to be some sort of balance where like, okay, the cohort can be fully in real life. And if you need to go for a week or two, that doesn't matter. You have the flexibility to go to your country, like go closer to your customers, whatever, but at least, have the full in real life experience. And when you mentioned like, how do you invest in AI startups now? The reality is that it is hard. And in this case, sometimes we have to just basically follow statistical formulas and just use the data that we have at our disposal, which is like, who is this founder, have they built something before, are they building something where they have like deep domain expertise or a unique unfair advantage, and even if the idea might be something that we can imagine an AI lab killing in the future, sometimes we have to invest in the founder, not necessarily because we care a lot about the product, because a lot of the times you can also invest in a founder who has it's really aligned to the vision of what they're building for the longer term. And whatever product comes out of it in the longer term, it's going to be different from the initial idea. So, for example, I don't know, maybe somebody who is a parent, who is I don't know, like an engineer and doctor guy who is a parent and lost his daughter to some sort of cancer. That person is going to work for the next 10 years on finding that cure, right? And maybe the first product doesn't matter. And maybe you think, well, maybe some of the AI labs, maybe the competition can kill it. But, I think ultimately it's better to just back that person who has the background and who has that longer term vision, and then let them figure it out. Because the reality is that if you ask me, I think the AI labs are really well positioned to just get become like these huge clusters that do everything for you. And honestly, as a company and as a person, I want to reduce counterparty risk. So I don't want to give my data to multiple labs, right, as a company, because that increases my counterparty risk. And my data should be, ultimately like the most valuable thing in my company. And so we're going to see some sort of like, I think we're going to be seeing that, right? Like people are going to want to choose just one lab. And if you're a legal company, you don't want to go and use Harriet or Henry. I don't even know the name of the company that was doing legal, but like Harvey. Because honestly, Anthropic and OpenAI, if they want to, they can literally sit down for 1 week and kill all the legal companies and all the AI legal companies. They can do that, right? So, thinking of sci-fi, I think we're definitely we're kind of like going to this future where we're gonna have this like super, cluster, huge companies, and these people with so much power. Like, I don't know, think about Dune, think about Star Wars, all that shit, where everybody, nobody has a job, and like it's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just crazy, and I love the Dune universe, because in that universe, we've like as humanity, we fucked AI, and now we cannot use computers, so we need to have human computers with the same technology. We're so afraid of it that it's impossible to have it again. So, guys, really exciting time to be building. AI is accelerating a ton of stuff right now. For example, at Bando, we are like a really small team iterating with building product, and obviously, the main insight is talking to customers, helping get the most insights out of it with AI, then do the product, the PRD with Claude, then tell Claude like build this thing on the PRD and just show that to the customer, like with the interface that it's a live demo. And I did that yesterday, and so amazing basic insights that are still so relevant. Something like there was a line in the product that said balance, and this guy said, ese es mi that's my saldo. Okay, it's named saldo. AI is gonna hallucinate whichever word the user wants that word, and that level of craft. I think it's gonna be super relevant in the upcoming weeks, months, and years. uh, Great episode, guys. Thank you a
One
lot.
thing One thing though that I did wanted to mention related to crypto is that, thinking about like where are things going really like in the near future. I was talking to a social media guy that we're about to hire, and I asked him like, when can we one shot marketing videos, right? Like, and he said 6 months from now. And 1 week after, Seed Dance 2.0 came out, and honestly, you can probably one shot now this thing. And he was off in his prediction by an orders of magnitude, because he said 6 months and it happened the week after. And so I think just people don't really understand the speed that things are going. And I think very like OpenClaw and really like has shown that you can actually build this world where agents work with agents, like we're there already. And in that world, as you guys said, the guy from Ethereum just, the Ethereum Foundation just left to build this, but I mean, he's late to the party because so many people have been doing this for the longest time. And yeah, agents are going to choose the agents are going to choose first probably to cryptocurrencies to pay each other, and it's just a better system for sure. Secondly, they're going to probably choose Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, nobody can take it away from them, while stable coins, most likely they will know that they're going to have some vulnerabilities. And yeah, like they're going to choose Bitcoin, like for that for sure. And the other stablecoins that they use, we don't know. Maybe they know something that we don't know, but they will also choose like for like daily payments, or there's some sort of stablecoin. And if I was like
they might choose ETH, man.
They might choose if it's stable enough. Just thinking about
No, obviously.
no, I mean for daily payments. I'm talking about daily payments. I think for like longer term like wealth preservation, I think either ETH or Bitcoin. I think it's going to be Bitcoin because it's more decentralized. But for daily payments, they will. I don't know what they will use. But that's a future that is happening now, and I think that's an interesting intersection of crypto and AI, and it's also just an interesting future that needs to be built. And what are the things that need to what is the future that needs to what are the things that need to be built in that future. And this doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Latin America or whatever, right? Like I feel like it's something that founders and people in general should be thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a laboratory. The best way to think about it is using these things, because we can hypothesize and analyze and do a lot of. We love thinking, so we can do a lot of thinking, but just test Claude, put it in your terminal, use OpenClaw in a Mac Mini or in a virtual machine or whatever, and figure out yourself. I think that sometimes we forget that we are so at the frontier that we feel we're late. But I don't know, there's people that are not using ChatGPT still. I mean, they are really late to the party. So guys, great episode. Go follow Kush at 0xKush, Simon at Real Simon. You can follow me at Abraham CR. Thank you for listening, and see you next week to chat about crypto, AI, and frontier markets. So take care. Bye.
Ciao.